Dust swirled like restless spirits in the dry noon air. At the center of the frontier town, a wooden platform stood tall, casting its shadow over the crowd gathered below. The gallows creaked with every gust of wind, its dangling ropes swaying like a snake waiting to strike. The people came in their Sunday best, though their faces bore nothing of mercy. Mothers clutched children close. Men spat into the dust and muttered about justice. Some came for the spectacle, others for vengeance. All eyes were fixed on the woman forced to climb the steps. Mara, her wrists were bound, her shawl torn and streaked with dirt, her face a map of sunburn, scars, and years carved by hunger and fear. She walked with no resistance, but her eyes, dark, unbroken, met the crowd with quiet defiance. The sheriff unrolled a slip of paper, his voice rough with the weight of authority. For theft, for violence, for bringing danger among decent folk. Mara, you stand guilty. You will hang by the neck until dead. A murmur rolled through the crowd, swelling into jeers. The rope lowered. For one heartbeat, Mara closed her eyes. And in that instant, the past surged back in jagged fragments. Snow. Her bare feet sinking into drifts, her arms wrapped around her little brother as his lips turned blue. She had begged the wagon train that passed by, but the settlers had only quickened their pace. The forest, a wolf lunging from the dark, her knife flashing, the animal's weight crushing her before she drove steel into its throat. Storms, her dragging firewood through howling winds, half-starved, eyes hollow but determined to endure, every memory burned. Every moment of survival had led her here, to the rope. The sheriff adjusted his hat, gave a nod. The hangman pulled the rope taut around her neck. The crowd fell silent. Children clutched their mothers. The air was so still it seemed the whole earth was waiting. And then, a voice cut through the silence. Steady, low, unshakable, sheriff. This hangin' ends now. Heads turned. From the crowd stepped Elias Boone, a tall man with a weathered face, his coat dusted from travel, his hat pulled low against the sun. His hands bore the calluses of work, his eyes the grief of years gone by. The sheriff frowned. Boone, this woman's sentence is set. Don't. Elias raised his voice, clear enough for the whole town to hear. That woman ain't no savage. She's strong. She's alive. And my little girl. He paused, the silence so thick you could hear the wind whistle through the gallows. My Lily needs a mother. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The word mother hung heavier than the rope around Mara's neck that Mara's eyes widened. Not with relief, but with shock. The sheriff's jaw worked. The people muttered. The noose hung tight. And in that suspended moment, between death and life, the entire town held its breath. Elias Boone was no stranger to whispers, but never had they carried such venom. By the next morning, the whole town buzzed like a hornet's nest struck with a stick. Folks muttered his name in saloons and in church pews, their words dripping with scorn. He saved a savage from the rope, brought shame to his wife's memory, endangering his little girl. Elias bore it with the same silence he used when mending fences or burying cattle after a storm. He had no words for them, only the weight of his choice, heavy as the rope that had nearly taken Mara's life. The woman he spared sat at his kitchen table now. The room smelled faintly of coffee and wood smoke, though the air was taut with silence. Her hands rested in her lap, raw from the ropes. Her eyes drifted over the walls, paintings of a soft-eyed woman who once laughed in this house. A woman Elias had loved and lost in childbirth. Across the table, little Lily clutched her ragged doll, her wide eyes studying Mara with a mixture of fear and wonder. Finally, her small voice broke the silence. Are you my mama now? Mara froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She looked from the child to Elias, and then back down at her hands. Elias cleared his throat, his voice rough. For now, she's staying with us. That's all. The girl nodded, though disappointment shadowed her face. Mara lowered her gaze, the question echoing inside her like a wound reopened. The following day, she walked the land in silence. The ranch sprawled across the prairie, but it bore the look of wear. Fences sagged. The herd was thin. Coyotes lurked on the ridges, watching with hungry eyes. Elias worked tirelessly, his hands steady, his jaw clenched tight. Yet she saw the truth. He was one man fighting against a world that never bent by nightfall. The ranch seemed swallowed by stillness. Until the howling began. Wolves circled the house, their glowing eyes shimmering in the dark. Horses screamed in the corral. Lily woke with a cry, clutching her doll to her chest. Elias grabbed his rifle, cursing under his breath. The pack was too many. He fired a shot, the report echoing across the prairie. But still, they came closer. Then Mara stepped forward. Barefoot, silent, her gaze fixed on the pack. She raised a torch high, the fire crackling, her voice low. A sharp, strange whistle that cut through the night air. The wolves paused. Their ears twitched, their growls softened. She moved like she belonged to the dark itself, swinging the torch into the tall grass. Flames snapped and flared, forcing the beasts back. With a final call, she scattered them into the hills, their howls fading into the distance. Elias stood frozen in the doorway, rifle slack in his hands. "How did you?" Mara turned, her face half lit by firelight. Her voice was quiet. "You survived long enough out there. You learned their tongue." For the first time, Elias looked at her not as a burden, but as someone carved from the same hard stone as the land itself. A survivor, but the prairie is never merciful for long. Near midnight, the ground began to tremble with hooves. Lily stirred in her bed. Elias's face went pale. He grabbed his rifle once more, eyes darting toward the window. Torches flickered in the distance, carried by masked riders. Their shouts pierced the stillness. "Hand her over, Boone." One voice bellowed. "That savage don't belong among decent folk." The barn glowed with sudden fire. Flames licked skyward, throwing sparks into the night. The horses shrieked inside, trapped by locked gates. Elias cursed under his breath. Lily cried, clutching Mara's leg. Mara's jaw tightened, eyes gleaming with the same fire that now consumed the barn. She stepped toward the door, shoulders squared, ready for whatever storm was about to break. The war Elias had feared was no longer on the horizon. It had arrived at his very doorstep. The night split open with fire and fury. The barn's roof groaned, beams snapping as flames clawed upward. Smoke rolled across the yard, thick and choking, while masked riders shouted from the dark, "Send her out, Boone, or we'll burn it all to the ground." Elias raised his rifle and fired. One of the torches tumbled into the dust, its bearer thrown from his horse. The rest only roared louder. Mara sprinted into the fire's glow. The barn doors rattled with terrified hooves. She hacked at the rope knots with a hatchet, her arms streaked with soot. The horses burst free, nearly trampling her as they fled into the prairie night. Gunfire cracked. Splinters tore from the porch rail beside Elias. He dropped behind a water trough, returning fire, every shot deliberate. Mara saw Lily, trapped. The girl stood near the burning wall, frozen, her doll clutched tight. Sparks rained down, the fire bending toward her. Mara didn't think. She charged through the smoke, scooping Lily into her arms, rolling across the dirt as a beam crashed down behind them. The girl sobbed into her chest. In the chaos, one rider broke through. He leapt from his horse, knife drawn, lunging at Elias. Elias grappled him, steel flashing between them. They crashed into the mud, the knife twisting dangerously close. Mara laid Lily down, grabbed the fallen torch, and swung hard. The flame struck the rider's shoulder, sending him shrieking back into the night. Elias scrambled to his feet, chest heaving. The attackers began to scatter, spooked by the ferocity of resistance. With a final volley of shots, they pulled back, their torches dwindling as they fled into the dark hills. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of the dying barn and the ragged breaths of those who remained. The ranch lay in ruin, smoke curling, fences broken, the ground littered with shell casings and blood. Elias staggered to the porch, lowering his rifle. He turned to Mara, his eyes wide with something beyond disbelief. "You saved her. You saved Lily." Mara's face was ash-streaked, her shawl burned at the edges. She did not answer. Her eyes were locked on the flames, the reflection of 100 old fires flickering inside them. Later, in the dim glow of the hearth, Elias broke the silence. His voice was low, stripped bare. "My wife. She died bringing Lily into this world. I thought I could raise her strong. Truth is, I've just been raising her scared. Scared of losing her too. Scared of being alone." Mara's voice was hushed, but steady. "Fear builds walls. But walls don't keep the world out. They only keep love from coming in. Her eyes brimmed, and slowly, painfully, she spoke of her past, of the dawn raid, soldiers on horseback, her mother cut down, her people scattered like dust on the wind. She had run and run until only survival remained. Tears streamed down Lily's cheeks as she climbed into Mara's lap, tiny arms wrapped tight around her neck. For the first time, Mara let herself return the embrace. Elias watched, his heart caught between grief and something he could not yet name. In this woman the town had called savage, he saw a reflection of himself, a soul beaten by loss, still standing. The flames outside dimmed, leaving only glowing embers. But Elias knew the fire was not finished. The men who attacked tonight would not forget. They would return, and next time, they would not leave without blood. Asterisk, asterisk, dawn broke red across the prairie, as though the sky itself bled for what was coming. Smoke still curled from the ruins of the barn, twisting into the morning air. Elias stood at the edge of the porch, rifle in hand, his face drawn tight with exhaustion. Mara tightened the strap of the hatchet against her hip, her shawl singed from the night before. The prairie was too quiet. Birds did not sing. Even the cattle shifted nervously, their heads lifting toward the hills. Then came the horn. A long, guttural call that rolled over the land like thunder on the ridge. They appeared, dozens of riders this time. Masked, armed, torches blazing in their fists. The ground trembled under their charge. Elias spat into the dust, his knuckles white on the rifle. "If this is where it ends," he muttered, "then so be it." Mara turned to him, her eyes steady, her voice like steel. "No, this is where it begins." The riders descended in a storm of hooves and dust. Gunfire cracked. Windows shattered. Elias fired shot after shot, every pull of the trigger steady and deliberate. Mara moved like a storm herself, darting, slashing, her blade catching firelight as she cut down the first man who dared to break through the fence. The rider threw a torch onto the porch roof. Flames licked upward. Mara grabbed a bucket, dousing the blaze before it spread, then swung a rifle stock into the attacker's jaw, dropping him hard into the dirt. Inside, Lily screamed. A rider had slipped through, dragging her by the arm. Mara's blood froze. She tore through the smoke, colliding with him. They wrestled, the man's knife inches from her face. With a desperate cry, she slammed the blade into the wall, twisted, and drove her elbow into his throat. He crumpled, and Lily scrambled back into her arms. Outside, Elias staggered. A bullet tore into his shoulder, another into his side. He dropped to one knee, yet still he fired, teeth gritted, each shot ripping through the air until his rifle clicked empty. The battle raged. Dust and smoke swallowed the ranch. Riders shouted curses, the clash of steel and fire filling the morning. At last, the tide shifted. Mara, streaked with blood and soot, stood tall over the bodies of the fallen. Her cries rang across the yard, sharp and defiant, like a war drum no fire could silence. The remaining attackers faltered, fear finally breaking their rage. With curses thrown into the wind, they turned their horses. Retreating into the hills, silence. Only the crackle of dying flames remained. Mara dropped her weapons and ran to Elias. He lay in the dirt, his breath shallow, his skin pale. Blood soaked his shirt. Lily knelt beside him, clutching his hand. He looked at Mara, eyes heavy but clear. You kept her safe? You proved him all wrong." He coughed, blood on his lips. "Promise me, Mara. Promise me you'll raise her strong. Don't let her fear the world." Her throat ached, but she bent close, tears cutting streaks through the ash on her cheeks. "I swear it. On my life, I swear it." A faint smile flickered across his face. Then, with a final exhale, his chest stilled. Lily cried out, clinging to him, unwilling to let go. Mara pulled her close, holding both the child and the grief that poured like rain from her heart. The prairie wind rose, carrying the scent of ash, the sound of mourning. Days later, the town gathered at a distance, watching as Mara buried Elias beneath the lone cottonwood tree that overlooked the plains. Some came out of shame, others out of curiosity. None dared stop her. They whispered still, savage, outcast, but their eyes carried something new. Not fear, not hatred, something closer to respect. When the last stone was placed on his grave, Mara took Lily's hand. Together they walked the prairie road, away from the smoking ruins of the ranch, toward a horizon painted in gold and sorrow. The girl looked up at her. "Will you really be my mama now?" Mara's voice wavered, but it was steady enough to hold. "Yes, little one. From now on, I will be." They walked on, their shadows stretching long behind them, their future uncertain. Yet for the first time, Mara did not feel alone. The wind carried the memory of a rancher's voice. Strong even in death, my kid needs a mother. And that memory became her compass, her vow, her salvation. They had tried to hang her for being too savage. But savagery is only what the world forces into the heart of the broken. In her courage, in her pain, she became what the prairie demanded, a survivor. And in one rancher's final act, she found a family worth fighting for. Soft music swells, fading into the horizon shot of Mara and Lily walking hand in hand. If this story moved you, share it with those who believe in courage, sacrifice, and the will to endure. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the untamed frontier.